Okay, Linda, you are on.
Uh, Good evening, and welcome to the League of Women Voters of Hays County Forum for the Hays County Sheriff and Texas House District 45. My name is Linda Calvert, and I'm president of the Hays League. Assisting us today are our technology experts, Susan Raybuck, Teresa Carvajal Rivette, and Laurie O'Donnell, and our timer, Larry Calvert. Our moderator tonight is Dorothy Marshon. She's a member of the Austin Area League and vice president of the state league, the board of directors. A very special thanks goes to Cheryl Davis, Marilyn Minar, and Ida Miller for their work as coordinators of these forums, and to Jan Rudnicki and Diane Wasnick for their work on Vote 411 and the physical voters guides that go out in the newspapers and are found in the libraries and all kinds of places. This August, the League of Women Voters celebrated the 100-year anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote. However, 10 months earlier, October 1919, we celebrated the 100-year anniversary of the League of Women Voters of Texas, something that we're kind of proud of, 10 months earlier. The League of Women Voters of Texas is a nonpartisan, grassroots civic organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and works to influence public policy through education and advocacy. Membership in the league is open to people 16 and older, regardless of gender identification. With 100 years of experience, the league is one of America's most trusted civic organizations. Today, our motto is empowering voters, defending democracy, and our work is definitely not done. Please consider joining us in this work. You can join on our website, or you can donate by going to lwvhaysco.com. That's our website. We have been involved in a number of activities, among them a whole lot of voter registration and those kinds of things. We're mostly known for that, but then besides that, we've also been doing census work. Now then, why, you might ask, why is the league involved with the census? Well, because the census is so very important. We are very dependent on an accurate account, for example, for political representation and for funding for many important programs, local, regional, and nationally. You've heard a lot of different back and forths about when the census had to be completed. Well, now then, we've been given a month's extension. The census must be completed by October 31st, 2020. Go to My 2020 Census, my2020census.gov to complete the census. And tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell anyone on the street you happen to get to talking to. It only takes about 10 minutes. It's really important. The other activities, as I said, are voter registration and other educational activities. But one of our major activities is vote411.org. That's where you can find it online. It is the League's online voters guide. It provides information about most of the races and about candidates and their positions on issues. We also have the news copy of the voter's guide available in libraries and newspapers. In Texas, for the first time, there is no straight ticket voting, and the ballot is quite long. A cheat sheet will reduce confusion and shorten your times at the polls. Think vote 411. Also, this year, ballot order is determined for each race by the party to which the current governor belongs. Therefore, Republican nominees for all races will be listed first on the ballot. Remember that no cell phone usage is allowed in the polls, so please go to vote411.org, put in your address, make your voting choices, print or copy your ballot, and take it to the polls with you. You will be very happy you did. At this time, I would like to invite the moderator, Dorothy Marchand, to review the forum rules, introduce the candidates, and begin the questions. Welcome to all of you this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Good evening and welcome to everyone. The rules are as follows. This webinar is being recorded and will be available online at the League of Women Voters of Hays County website. That's lwvhaysco.com. Because the questions have been solicited from the community ahead of time, both the chat and the Q&A functions have been disabled for attendees. The candidates have agreed to the rules for tonight's forum. Only candidates who appear on the ballot have been invited to speak and participate in the forum. There will be no substitute speakers.
Are we ready to move over?
With the exception of news media reporting the event, video recordings of this event may only be broadcast in their entirety and unedited and with the express consent of the League of Women Voters of Hays County. No part of the recording of the forum may be used for campaign purposes. Candidate responses to questions will address relevant issues. Personal attacks of any kind are not allowed. At the beginning of the forum, each candidate in ballot order will have an opportunity to make a 1-minute opening statement. Then each candidate will have 1 minute to address each question that is presented. There will be no rebuttal. The timekeeper will hold up a card to indicate when there are 15 seconds remaining in an allowed time period. When time has elapsed, a timekeeper will hold up the stop card. The candidate will conclude his or her sentence at that time. Each candidate will have 1 minute to make closing remarks. At this time, I would like to introduce the candidates for Hays County Sheriff, Carrie Cutler and Alex Villalobos, and invite them to make an opening statement. Mr. Cutler, will you please begin?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And first of all, I want to thank the League of Women's Voters for this hosting this event tonight. It was probably pretty difficult with the pandemic we all been facing. My name is Carrie Cutler. I'm your Hays County Sheriff, position I've held for the past 10 years. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in criminal justice and also a master's degree from TCO, the licensed agents for the state of Texas. I've been in law enforcement for the past 46 years as a commissioned peace officer. But I come to you tonight not just as your sheriff. I come to you tonight also as an administrator. As a sheriff, you're responsible for a $46 million budget, 430 employees, about 440 inmates, and millions of dollars of county assets. You better be a really good administrator along with being a sheriff, and I've proven that the last 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Villalobos, could you please make some opening comments?
Yes, my name is Alex Villalobos, and I'm your Democratic candidate for Hays County Sheriff. I'm currently your Hays County Chief of Staff. I'm your Emergency Management Coordinator during the pandemic. I'm an elected city official with the city of Kyle. I have over 14 years of law enforcement. We are transitioning in a rural to a more urban county. I will bring leadership that prepares the department for future and build teams that will create community. I see need to modernize our approach to law enforcement, training that prepares our staff for current environments, equipment that provides the highest probability of success in jail and in the field, create robust recruitment and retention programs so we can have high access to all of the candidate pools that we have. We have institutions of higher ed and regional training centers nearby. Create modern specialized units that provide support to local and regional law enforcement agencies, i.e. cyber tech investigations. Leaders have the capacity to make an impact for growth and change. I'm running to bring that change that serves our community in their best interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to the Q&A part of our forum. The first question is, given Hays County's rapidly growing population, what are the county's law enforcement needs and how would you address them? First, Mr. Cutler, please.
Well, growth has been an issue ever since I've been in office, as we're one of the top growing counties in the country. To do that, first and foremost, we had to address the issues with our Hays County Jail. We did that in 2016 by going to the voters with a bond that was passed to renovate and expand the jail. We're only weeks away from that being completed and started bringing the inmates that have been outsourced back to Hays County as long as their tax dollars. We've increased our patrol. We put more supervisors on the street. We've increased the mental health unit to put a civilian mental health professional with our mental health unit to deal with mental health issues across the county. So we've expanded on all these areas and we continue to do that. We're now training around 55,000 hours is what we're training in our training academy. So we continue to use training. It's a big thing in this country. There's about training the officers need to get, and we're giving it to them.
Thank you. Mr. Villalobos, could you please answer the question?
Yes, I think first and foremost, we need to we need to fix our in-house. So creating a robust recruitment and retention program, creating a promotional program for upward mobility within the organization, create more modern divisions within the organization so we can recruit a pool of very specialized people to come in and actually protect us and protect our property and places and things. I think the growth in and of itself will require us to fix our in-house infrastructure, create an environment where people want to come and work so we can have the staff in the jails and in the front lines. And then furthermore, address training that will allow us to garner better relationships with our growing demographic, our growing diversity in our community, and continue to communicate with them and allow them to communicate with us so that we can learn what is in the best interest of the county. That is the growth pattern. That is what we need to do to address that. And then furthermore, keep on addressing our policies within the organizations and overall community. Thank you.
Okay, the next question. The federal 1033 program, of which Hays County is a part, provides local law enforcement with excess military equipment, including military tanks, trucks, tactical equipment, and weapons. Focusing on these items and remembering the associated costs of transporting, maintaining, storing, and the required training, what is your position on the cost benefit to the taxpayer? Mr. Villalobos.
Well, the cost benefit is clear, and that we're receiving equipment that will help us in the front line, especially emergency response equipment and resources. The one thing that I like is in our transitioning environment is that we need to demilitarize the way we look and the way we respond to communities, yes. But the equipment that I'm more assertive to looking at is first responder equipment, whether it's first aid, immediate first aid, emergency first aid in our first aid. Those things are large pieces of equipment that keep our people safe, keep our community safe, and continue to bring in resources that we can utilize to help people and to provide safety and to address any emergency needs to any one individual or to any officer or to any person that works within the organization or any people that we encounter. Those medical supplies, those first aid supplies are integral for us to completing and providing high quality service.
Thank you, Mr. Cutler.
1033 program I support wholeheartedly. It's been around for about 2 decades at the Hays County Sheriff's Department. Sheriffs previous to my administration also used it. And it's a great program. We do get equipment that we need, first aid, things along this line. But let's talk about weapons. All our officers issued rifles. This is one example I want to use. They're issued rifles. These rifles cost $600 to $800 each. We went through the 1033 program and picked up 20 of those rifles. That saved tax dollars money. We would have had to buy those rifles out of tax dollars money and out of our budget. We did that. The Hays County Sheriff's Department does not have any tanks. We do not have any MRAPs. We have access to them, but we don't have them. We only go out and get equipment that we need for the women and men of Hays County to do their job, also to serve the people we serve. So that's the kind of equipment we go after. Strong support of the 1033 program.
Thank you. Next question. Given the concerns with the Hayes County Jail system overpopulation and current health risks due to the pandemic, what practices do you support to reduce the jail population? Mr. Cutler, you first, please.
As I've said earlier, the jail population and crowded conditions have been a real problem. They were a problem for sheriffs long before me also, something I had to deal with. So what we did is in 2016, we went to voters across Hayes County for a public safety bond, and it passed. We immediately went to work expanding our jail and renovating it. Our jail is over 30 years old, and so we had to renovate beside expansion. We're near completion on that project. It was a $106.4 million public safety bond, and almost about half of that went before the jail. We're near that completion, start bringing inmates home. We started programs there when I was there within 6 weeks of cite and release. We're now real close to cite and divert programs to turn people away. They're charged. Did not have to go through the booking process, and that frees up the intake at the Hayes County Jail. So we're doing that, and we're moving forward. And I'm looking forward to the opening of the renovation here in the next few weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Villalobos.
Well, I thank you for that question. The majority of that bond has gone to the public safety building that's currently being built behind the government center. So there's still a lot to be left for the current jail expansion. But my assessments and the assessments that took place in 2010 and 2016 talked about interventions and programs that would have told us under the assessments that we didn't require or did not need the jail expansions with those interventions in place. Things such as pretrial services, things such as diversionary programs, things such as supervision programs, things such as alternative court programs that would allow us to address the criminal justice system in a more efficient manner. I believe that given that particular piece, I'm the one that created the most current policies and when we brought them forward for the Criminal Justice Coordinating Commission and brought those forward based on my assessments, looking at on average $167 a day per inmate in our current jail system. So we're looking at those things. We need to look at utilizing those initiatives that have been told us since 2010 and 2016 and put them in place.
Okay, thank you. What support would you continue, improve on, or implement in the Hayes County Sheriff's Office for your officers in de-escalation and safe arrest practices? Mr. Villalobos.
Well, number one, I think we need to address doing policy assessments and operational assessments to determine what types of policies and operational issues that we have in our department that are not only putting them in harm's way or putting our citizens in harm's way. I would support de-escalation techniques. I would support diversity training. I would support implicit bias training that allows our officers and equips them to put themselves in the highest probability of success on a daily basis out in the field and when they encounter citizens one-on-one. The other items are programs that would create community engagement and specific programs that would support legitimacy and better relationships with our community. Those types of community policing programs really help us prevent a lot of issues in our community, but also helps us create good relationships that provides legitimacy to the jobs that we do. And furthermore, provide the best quality of service to our citizens.
Thank you. Mr. Cutler.
The key to this is training. Like I said a while ago, it's a big push across this country that officers need more training. We do de-escalation training. That's mandated by the state of Texas. We do that. Our jailers get it as well as our patrol officers. Also getting mental health training. So we expand on that. We teach that to these guys every day, and so we can work with our community. Like I mentioned with our mental health unit, I have a mental health civilian that goes out to deal with these problems with our officers on the street. So we continue to do that, and we will continue to do that through training. It's very important that we give these officers training. Any additional mandates that coming down from the state of Texas, we'll implement them in our program and put them into training programs.
Thank you. What protocols are in place or would you establish for Texas Immigration Law SB 4 in order to safeguard against racial profiling? And what, if any, is the law's impact on the local jail population? First, Mr. Cutler.
Okay, First, racial profiling is not an issue. We also teach that in our academy and to our officers. That's not an issue with the Hays County Sheriff's Office. When it comes to immigration, it's real simple. If you're illegal in the United States or here in Texas, do not commit a crime in Hays County because you're subject to go through an immigration process. It's been in place long before I became sheriff. And that's under Senate Bill 4. We ask the standard questions. We find out if a person's illegally here. If they're illegally here, we contact ICE. They've said this has been going on for 20 years probably. If ICE wants to put a detainer on them, we will. It all has to do with criminal offenses in the citizen, against the citizens of Hays County. We will not put up with that regardless of where you are. When the officers investigating a crime on the street or whatever, they do not know the citizenship of the individual they're dealing with. So that's a part of it. We will continue to work with ICE, and that it has not impacted our jail as much as you think, because the individuals that have ICE detainer on, they have criminal charges against the state of Texas right here in Hays County. So we will continue to work with ICE, and once these charges are taken care of in the state of Texas or in Hays County, they will be turned over to ICE if ICE wants them.
Mr. Villalobos.
Well, I believe that some of the unintentional consequences of policies that are in place that are hard to understand from people that come from other countries is what creates the idea that there's racial profiling. So I believe that detangling the system in and of itself and providing good educational pieces to those people that are engaged with our law enforcement that do have immigration issues. Number one, reduce arrest and jail bookings by utilizing those same cite and release and those same diversionary programs for them for low-level nonviolent crimes. And then furthermore, building programs with the communities that where these people live, talking to them, speaking with them, and guiding them and empowering them to understand how the system works, how they can protect themselves, and how they can utilize the rights and laws that they are afforded once they come into our system. So I believe that a complete policy assessment would allow us to understand which policies do that to these people in these situations, as well as all citizens in Hays County. Is that we have to do that assessment first. And I believe that there are some that do create an aura of racial profiling. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. On July 2nd, 2020, Governor Abbott issued an executive order with a series of health and safety mandates related to COVID-19. How do you, or would you, ensure that your staff enforces these mandates throughout the community? Mr. Villalobos.
Well, I would ensure that we have all the equipment necessary. As your emergency management coordinator, I did that for not only local, state, and city and regional resources, but ensure that they understand how this pandemic works, how they can be infected, how they are exposed to it, and address them from an operational standpoint on supporting and really enforcing them to wear those masks when appropriate to protect them and their families. I think it's important that I do what I've done as your emergency management coordinator, get out and get those supplies in place, make decisions that for isolation of people that are infected, make appropriate decisions so you don't spread it throughout your organization, spread it throughout your jail, spread it throughout the community, and make sure that you follow and abide by all those different programs to ensure the safety of all of your officers, your civilian staff, your other staff that you work with, fellow partner law enforcement, and your internal offices.
Thank you. Mr. Cutler.
The key, I think one of the keys is educating your public, in which we do that. As far as following the guidelines, we do that at the Hays County Sheriff's Office. Our jail, entire staff in the jail wear masks and protective gear. They sanitize, they take care of the situation there. They test inmates that are coming in if necessary, if they have any symptoms. In the public, we have masks. Our officers are all instructed to wear masks, and we do that. And we have all the protective gear necessary when we're making arrests to protect the officers that are working out there. So it is key to get the public educated, but we are providing with supplies, and we do want the public to be educated on this issue. They all know how serious COVID is. We all know that. We all know about the deaths in this county and across this country. So we take it serious, and we will continue to do that and go by the rules.
Thank you. Okay, the next questions that we have come from the community. So as sheriff, what policies would you change or update? Mr. Cutler.
We're constantly updating and changing policies as so needed. We evaluate our policies regular and we change them. to fit the needs of the citizens we serve and the men and women that work in the Hayes County Sheriff's Department. So that's a tough question. Depends on what the policy is. Depends on the use of force. If it's a use of force issues and things are coming down from the state, we'll address it. If there's arrest issues, things are coming down, we'll address it. So we constantly change policies to keep up to date on what we do, so we don't get in any issues with use of force or anything along this line. So that's something that's done periodically. We do that at all times in the Sheriff's Department to address policies we need to move forward.
Thank you. Mr. Villalobos.
I think within the first 90 days of taking office, that there needs to be a complete and total assessment of all policies, both operational policies and use of force policies, to determine how they're affecting the environment for the officers and how it's affecting the community. And then take those policies and update them to ensure that we're providing the highest quality service and putting our officers in the highest probability of success. But not only that, but also address internal promotional and training policies, equality of work and assignments within the organization. Make sure that we have an open door policy that allows those individuals to come in and speak. You know, I know that when you open up that door, a lot of things come in, but I think it's the only way that you can keep in touch with your front line, the only way that you can keep in touch with your SROs, the only way that you can keep in touch with your community is to make yourself open and available. But first and foremost is address all of our policies, do an assessment, and see where those unintended consequences are, and address them and update them to the best interest of our county. Thank you.
Thank you. In your view, what are the essential qualifications and personal characteristics needed to lead a local law enforcement agency? Mr. Villalobos.
Someone that's open door, someone that's available, someone that is visible throughout the community, one that is there to support their staff members and addressing that and prioritizing those dollars appropriately to them, but also listening to the community and making sure that we are learning from the community and addressing the issues and concerns that they have on a regular basis. Being someone that is a student all the time, listening, learning, and addressing those items. Someone that is highly qualified and that can perform the job. I can perform this job. I've done it in emergency management to protecting our community across this county, also in our region, and working with other law enforcement agencies or emergency agencies, working through the COGS in our region. And then furthermore, addressing the needs and concerns of our local law enforcement partners and our communities within those particular jurisdictions. That is what we need to do and then have those qualifications.
Thank you. Mr. Cutler.
Work in law enforcement, especially at Hayes County Sheriff's Department, you got to be trustworthy, you got to have high integrity, credibility, and strong morals. We look at that in our hiring process, which we hire a lot of people each year. That's very important through your entire career, not just to get hired, through your entire career. If you're on any kind of disclosure list or Brady list at the Hayes County Sheriff's Office, you will not get a job. You probably will not, most likely not get a job anywhere in law enforcement. So we take a hard look at that. We have an intense background of people we hire. We look at their education, look at their military. And if they have flaws in there, they're not going to make it through the hiring process. So the key to this is you've got to have the highest integrity, credibility, and you've got to have that at all times so the public will have trust in you, and you've got to lead by example. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are now ready for the closing statements, and we'll begin with Mr. Cutler.
The decision's clear. It's simple. As Gary Cutler, as your sheriff, you have the highest integrity, credibility, morals, and something I practice every day, and I will continue to practice. Across this country right now, there's a big push, law enforcement agencies, to get rid of any bad cops. I support that 100%. Right now, I'm endorsed by every law enforcement agency in the entire Hayes County. Hayes County Sheriff's Office Association, San Marcos Police Officer, Buda, Kyle, all the police associations endorse me. That tells me something. The constables, John Ellen, Ron Hood, Don Montague, fully supporting me. Commissioners, Martin Jones, Walt Smith, Lon Shell, full endorsements. When you get these kind of endorsements, the League of the Fraternal Order of Police State, Fraternal Order of Police Local, full endorsements. I'm proud of these endorsements. I worked hard to get these endorsements by what I do each and every day. You got to be someone that be a good leader, and I am that. I've proven that my entire career here.
Thank you. Mr. Villalobos.
My integrity and honesty have never been questioned. As a matter of fact, all three chiefs that I've served in the past and have worked under have never disciplined me, have only given me letters of commendation. But I have served with honesty and integrity and will continue to do so for the rest of my career and continue going forward. That is what I teach myself, my family. That is what I teach the fellow officers that I've worked with. That is what I've taught any capacity that I've taken as a leader in this community. My entire career has been about building communities, empowering people to access government and engage the political process, not violating First Amendment rights or creating opportunities for lawsuits to come to the county. Humanizing law enforcement and promoting community engagement policies educate and involve all citizens. Create a fair working environment and promotional opportunities for all people within the organization. I have a vision for our future. I will not use the office to belittle people, and I will not violate the constitutional rights of all people. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the forum for Hays County Sheriff. Thank you to both candidates for your participation and for giving voters information they need to make knowledgeable decisions at the polls. Thank you to the audience for attending and actively participating in our democracy. Community questions which could not be addressed this evening will be submitted by the League to the candidates for their response on either their campaign website, Facebook page, or any other means they think is appropriate. Recordings of tonight's forum can be found on the Hays County League website, lwvhaysco.com. Please look for audience and candidate feedback surveys, which will be sent out tomorrow. Your feedback is very important to us and will help the League plan future events that meet the needs of Texas voters. The forum for Texas House District 45 will begin in just a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Okay. Are we ready?
All good, Dorothy.
Okay, great. Welcome now to the forum for Texas House District 45. It's my pleasure to introduce the candidates for this race, Carrie Isaac and Erin Zwiener, and invite them to make an opening statement. We will begin with Ms. Isaac. Ms. Isaac, can you make an opening statement, please? There you go. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carrie Isaac. I'm running for state representative. I'm a wife and a mother to 2 teenage boys, and I've been active in our community for over 15 years. I understand that property taxes are out of control and created a burden on our working families and our seniors, and I will work to reform our property tax system. I know that small businesses are the heart of our economy, and I will work to cut regulations and red tape that make it difficult for our small businesses to thrive. We must keep our community safe. I will fight to fund border security to keep gangs, drug cartels, and human traffickers out of our communities. And I am committed to our teachers and students, and I will work to direct more money into the classroom so that our teachers and students have the best chance to excel. I will fight to protect our hill country. We must protect and utilize our natural resources wisely. And I promise you, no one will outwork me in fighting for freedoms and values important to our community and our state.
Thank you. Ms. Zwiener?
Hey, y'all, I am State Representative Erin Zwiener, and thank y'all so much for coming out tonight and staying engaged with the electoral process. I am a freshman member of the Texas legislature, and after my freshman session, Texas Monthly referred to me as the most savvy of the freshmen and a future leader of the House Democrats. You know, I stepped up to run because I believe in my values of healthy communities, inclusivity, and common sense government. And that's not what I saw reflected in our representation here in House District 45. I helped pass an $11.6 billion education package that is funding $6.5 billion into our public schools, including pay raises for educators, funding for full day pre-K, funding for our English language learners and our special education students. That money also dropped your school district property tax rates somewhere between 7 and 11 cents, depending on your school district. Next session, I am going to go fight to expand Medicaid so that every Texan has access to affordable health care and we can all continue to afford to visit the doctor.
Thank you. Let's move on to the Q&A portion of the forum. First question. Texas is 43rd in the nation in primary health care access, highest in the number of uninsured living in our state, and has one of the highest maternal mortality rates. Would you support or introduce legislation that would give more Texans access to health care and to some form of health insurance, such as Medicaid? Please explain your answer. We'll start with Ms. Isaac.
This is an area that I am passionate about and I have a master's degree in. Patients right now are at the mercy of a shadowy system with access to little information that they need to make the best decisions about their own health care. We need more transparency. We should know how much something costs before we buy it. People should be able to shop around. If you can shop around, that causes competition, and competition drives down cost. Our healthcare system is expensive and complicated because too many third-party people have wedged themselves between our medical professionals and our patients. We need a competitive and transparent healthcare system. I want to work with the legislature to continue to support more policies that give more competition and more choices to patients. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zwiener.
Yeah, I'm going to answer the question. Yes, I will support expanding Medicaid in the state of Texas. Price transparency is great. It's an important tool to help address rising costs of healthcare, but price transparency doesn't help someone who's having to choose between paying for a procedure and paying their mortgage. Too many Texans are one diagnosis away from bankruptcy. The biggest thing we can do tomorrow here in Texas is expand Medicaid, just like 38 other states already have done. Expanding Medicaid will cover another 1.5 million Texans, and it will bring in $10 billion of our federal income taxes back home to our state. It'll help keep rural hospitals open. It will help drive down the healthcare costs for all Texans. And it will help put us forward to have a community where everyone has access to healthcare. If we have learned anything from this COVID-19 pandemic, it's that we are all only as healthy as our sickest relative. And I want to make sure everyone has access to healthcare. Medicaid expansion is the way forward.
Thank you. What is your position on the Permian Highway natural gas pipeline project when it comes to the issue of private corporations' use of eminent domain and the environmental impact that the pipeline would create? First, Ms. Zwiener.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think it's very unfortunate that Kinder Morgan chose to locate this pipeline through the heart of the Hill Country, through the heart of House District 45. It didn't make sense. And nothing illustrated that better than the decision to try and cross under the Blanco River, not once, but twice. In my first meeting with Kinder Morgan, I pointed at that on the map and I said, why? Why would you cross the river when you can just avoid it? And I know I'm not the only one who pointed that out. Unfortunately, the company proceeded ahead. They lost thousands of gallons of drilling fluid when they hit a karst feature trying to drill under the river and muddied community members' wells, all because they didn't stop and take stock of the community and listen to the local expertise. So I will support legislation. Well, shoot, I will file legislation to create a public routing process for these large pipelines, just like we have with a road or a large electrical transmission line or a railroad. They have the power of eminent domain to take people's land. That's an incredible power that should not exist without proper transparency, oversight, and public input.
Thank you. Ms. Isaac?
Yes, I have talked to property owners who are not happy about the pipeline, and I've also met with representatives from Kinder Morgan. We spoke about the issue of low initial offers, and they agree that that process definitely needs to be reformed. Landowners should have a bigger voice in regards to easement terms. Companies should be required to meet with landowners so landowners have a bigger voice in the whole process. My opponent in the fake news media say that she fought the pipeline. She did not accomplish anything. Our Republican congressman, Chip Roy, was able to work with Kinder Morgan to get them to go around the river instead of under the river. I know how to work with people to get it done. I will be a strong voice to the residents of Hays and Blanco counties. Vote Carrie Isaac for state representative.
Thank you. Our next question, what legislative steps would you take to ensure that all Texans can fairly exercise their voting rights? Ms. Isaac?
Sorry, I had no time. Yeah, vote. You know, the process that we have here in Texas, the absentee process that we have in place works well. You ask for a ballot and you get one. I know that some states do mass bailouts. I mean, mass ballot mailouts without voters requesting it, but they've been doing this. They have processes in place that work well. I don't believe that states that have not been doing this should change this process right before an election.
Thank you. Ms. Zwiener.
Yeah, thank you for this question. I do want to say real quick that the coalition of folks, including myself, who fought the Kinder Morgan pipeline, delayed it getting into operation by a year and have laid down a flag. And I am confident that we will have dissuaded other companies from choosing to come through our beautiful hill country. I believe the right to vote is sacred, and it's something we need to protect here in Texas. Unfortunately, too many Texas laws are designed to make it harder for you to exercise your right to vote and disproportionately impact young folks and communities of color. We have to change that. The first thing we can do, allow online voter registration. I have helped register dozens of folks in the last couple of weeks, and I love doing it. And goodness, I wish they had an online form to make it easier. There are only there's only 12 other states that do not have online voter registration. It is secure, it works. I also will work to expand access to vote by mail to all Texans. It's something many other states have, including the liberal bastion of Arizona. It is something that helps ensure that every single voter can have their voice be heard and be informed at the polls.
Thank you. Okay, the next question. Several bills on criminal justice were introduced but not enacted during the last legislative session. What issues would you like to see addressed in the state's criminal justice system during the next session? Ms. Zwiener.
So one piece of legislation that we passed through the Texas House, but that unfortunately was dead on arrival in the Senate, was decriminalizing possession of low levels of marijuana. And that's something that's really important because it impacts a lot of our young people, again, disproportionately our young people of color. That's something I think we can get over the finish line next session, but that's just the start of the work. We need to mandate implicit bias training for all law enforcement. We need to end arrests for low-level crimes when they are not necessary. That's also legislation that narrowly failed passing the House next session. And we need to make sure that we have strong use of force standards for our law enforcement. A Texas State student, Justin Howell, was shot in the head with less lethal munition at protests in Austin. Austin PD has noted that they hit the wrong person. I am working on legislation right now to ban the use of these less lethal munitions in crowd control situations. They are not designed for it. And we have seen too many young folks have life-altering consequences from their improper use.
Thank you. Ms. Isaac.
We need bail reform. Bail should be set at risk, not riches. And we also need to make sure that we fund the police. My opponent likes to talk about the protesters that were hurt during protests, but I've never heard her talk about our police officers that actually were injured during the protests. We must keep our borders safe and fund border security. My opponent wants to defund border security. I have hit over 6,000 doors and people are worried about their safety. My opponent voted against a bill that would protect boys and girls from sex trafficking and against the school safety bill. I will fight to keep our schools and our communities safe.
Thank you. Next question. After the 2020 census, congressional and state legislative districts will be redrawn. What process do you support to ensure fair representation? Ms. Isaac?
Unfortunately, there is not a perfect process for redistricting. However, I definitely trust a democratically elected official more than I would a board appointed official that is answers to no one. Everyone has an agenda. The board would be appointed by someone with an agenda, at least the way that redistricting is done now. They are conducted and they have multiple checks and balances, for instance, voters and the courts. You know, when the Democrats were in control for years, we never heard anything about this. But now that the Republicans are in control, now they want to change the rules. This is nothing but politics.
Thank you. Ms. Zwiener?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to have to take a second to address a couple things. One is, yes, I voted against legislation that was a power grab by our indicted Attorney General, Ken Paxton, to take the ability to prosecute human trafficking cases from our local DAs and hold that himself, despite the fact that that office had very little track record of successfully pursuing those cases. I also voted against legislation to allow an unlimited number of armed teachers on our schools. I stand by both those votes. 100%. They were the right thing to do. Regarding redistricting, we need an independent process, and my opponent is correct. Both Democrats and Republicans have a history of gerrymandering, which is clearly why we need a new system that puts the voters first and not the politicians. So I will support an independent redistricting process. We cannot enact that in time before the next redistricting. But what I can promise you next session is I will fight to make sure that Hays County's communities of interest, our school districts, our cities stay whole and aren't chopped up like they are now. San Marcos has some of the most egregious district lines in the nation, and I am going to do everything I can to keep that from happening again.
Thank you. The next question. What is your position regarding local budgetary issues concerning law enforcement and related mental health services? Ms. Zwiener.
The legislature's job is to set the rules by which our cities and our counties operate under. It is not to micromanage their budgets. So I will continue to support my local elected officials as they work through these issues. At the state level, we're going to work to set minimum use of force standards, and we're going to work to set some minimum accountability standards. But I am not going to support us trying to create arbitrary rules around their budget decisions. I trust you, the voters who are electing your city and county representatives, to put people there who you think are doing a good job. I also will say I really admire some of the creative work that our local electeds are doing to think about public safety in new and creative ways. Our law enforcement officers are not equipped to respond to mental health calls in general. Some of our cities do have special mental health officers, but generally just one or two, not enough to respond to all the calls they get. So we have to think of public safety in a holistic way. We can't think of it just in black and white terms. And I'm really disappointed to see the way this issue has been politicized for this election cycle, because this was a bipartisan issue last session.
Thank you. Ms. Isaac.
I believe that the state and local government should work with churches and nonprofits to help expand medical health resources to people. A good example of this working well is CASA, where the government and nonprofits work together for the need of our community. I also want to work to expand mental health resources to our students, but we need to make sure that we fully fund the police and keep our communities safe.
Thank you. The next questions we have were created by the community based on issues and concerns of theirs. What is your position on government assistance for small businesses and people who have lost their jobs during this economic crisis? Ms. Isaac.
The number one issue that I'm hearing from voters when I am at the door is property taxes. Property taxes are out of control. They are hurting our working families and our seniors. I want to implement a spending cap at the state level of population plus inflation and use remaining revenue to buy down the school maintenance and operations taxes. That's about 40 to 50% of the taxes that you pay. If we do this, your tax bill will go down every year. Experts say that we can pay this off in 10 to 12 years. This would also get rid of the problem with Robin Hood, which takes from every school district in House District 45.
Thank you. Ms. Zwiener?
I apologize. Can you repeat the question? I lost what the original.
What is your position on government assistance for small businesses and people who have lost their jobs during the economic crisis?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dorothy, for repeating that. One of the things we've learned during this pandemic is that our social safety net here in Texas is broken quite fundamentally. Our Texas Workforce Commission was operating off a server set in the 90s to process unemployment claims, which resulted in dramatic backlogs. Now, we had an unanticipated number of claims come in at once, but it was heightened because we hadn't invested in our social safety net to make sure those systems work. Now, my office helped hundreds of House District 45 residents go through that unemployment claims process, and through that learned a lot of the holes in the system. So I'm going to work to try and rebuild that system. We also right now need to be looking at rental assistance and mortgage assistance to keep folks in their homes. And quite frankly, it is not good for our economy to have a bunch of Texans suddenly homeless, or to have a whole bunch of folks have to sell their homes under duress. That's how you turn a recession into a depression, which is not the direction we want to go. We also do need to work on property tax issues, and the best way to do that is to fund our school property, or to fund our schools, because if the state doesn't pay its fair share, homeowners are going to pay it instead.
Speaking of that, property tax reform in 2019 did not solve all school funding issues, particularly for small rural districts, including here in Blanco County. If property taxes are cut, please discuss your position on using general revenue funds. First, Ms. Zwiener.
The state needs to pay its fair share for public schools. I am a public school graduate here in Texas. The state paid for 60% of the cost of my education. Right before I took office, it was down to 38%, the state share. Where did the difference come from? Property taxes. That's why folks are feeling this in their wallet. A lot of the blame gets cast onto our cities and our counties, but it really is our school districts being put between a rock and a hard place. So last session, you know, like, as I mentioned, we put $11.6 billion into our public school system. That brought the state share up to 45%. It is progress, but it is not all the way there. And my biggest worry next session is that, you know, conservative extremists will come in, say we have to cut the budget dramatically to try and not tap into the rainy day fund, and that we will have the same experience that we had with our 2011 cuts, where we set our schools back to zero. I am going to fight to defend our public education funds. I am willing to use the rainy day fund to do that, because our schools are that important. We cannot balance the budget on the backs of our school children.
Thank you. Ms. Isaac.
Yes, so my opponent voted at least 9 times to raise taxes and fees and against property tax relief. And I am committed to helping homeowners with their property taxes. Like I said, my plan earlier, I want to enact a spending cap at the state level of population plus inflation, and use the remaining revenue to buy down the school maintenance and operations taxes. That would actually cut our property taxes. Our property taxes would go down every year. That's about 40 to 50% of your tax bill. This would also alleviate the problem of Robin Hood. I have a plan to do this.
Thank you. The next question, please discuss your views on women's health and reproductive rights issues. Ms. Isaac.
Yes, I do support women's health. My opponent is trying to paint me as someone who does not support women's health, because I do not support our tax dollars funding abortions. Abortions are not healthcare. My opponent says that abortions are essential, and she advocates to take away personal protection equipment from our healthcare professionals on the front line so that abortion clinics can continue to perform abortions. I will not put the safety and well-being of our healthcare professionals at risk.
Ms. Zwiener.
I guess I get to do a lot of rebuttals tonight. I absolutely opposed our, again, indicted Attorney General Ken Paxton, who, by the way, endorsed my opponent in the primary when he used the governor's order to try and shut down non-essential medical procedures, when he tried to use that as a way to attack women's access to abortion services. Now, if there is anything that is a time-sensitive procedure, it is abortion, and it was a ridiculous power grab and using a crisis to make a political statement. It was shameful. He was losing that in court when the governor lifted the order. I've been attacked on mail for this by some folks who support my opponent, but I'm going to say it again. I am unapologetically pro-choice. I trust you to make the best decision for yourself. And if you have made the decision to seek an abortion, I want that abortion to be safe. I want it to be accessible, and I want it to be affordable. And that is what I will continue to fight for in the Texas House, regardless of any scare rhetoric that comes from the other side. I will say it is very unfortunate as a young mom to see folks try to imply that I don't care about children.
Thank you. The next question, what is your position on the role of state government in regulating the educational environment of LGBTQ students? Discuss any legislation you would support or oppose in this area. Ms. Zwiener.
Yeah. I am a founding member of the Texas House LGBTQ caucus, and am one of 5 out members in the legislature. And as someone who grew up bisexual and understands the pressures that keep someone in the closet, could you mute yourself if you're going to talk, please? Thank you. As someone who understands those pressures, I know how important it is that our LGBTQ youth feel affirmed and safe in their learning environments. You know, I chose to keep the fact that I was bisexual a secret for years. Came out to a friend when I was 16, didn't come out to anybody else for a decade. And that's because the world didn't feel safe. I want our LGBTQ youth to feel affirmed. I'm very supportive of some of the moves our school districts are doing right now following recent Supreme Court decisions to affirm LGBTQ protections for all of their youth. I will fight any return of the bathroom bill, and I would like to see our sex education and reproductive health education include the existence of LGBTQ folks.
Thank you. Ms. Isaac?
I believe that all students should be treated with dignity. I do believe we need to keep left-wing dogma out of our schools. I've knocked on around 6,000 doors, and the things that I'm hearing at the door that are important to voters in this district are property taxes and keeping our safe communities. Like I said, my opponent wants to defund border security. She has voted against keeping boys and girls safe from sex traffickers. She voted against a school safety bill. I will fight to make sure that our schools and our communities that are safe, and I will fight property taxes.
Thank you. I would now like to invite the candidates to provide a closing statement, beginning with Ms. Isaac.
Hi, I've been involved in our community for 15 years. I believe that nonprofits and churches do a much better job of keeping our neighbors, of taking care of our neighbors than government. That's why I have volunteered on the Dripping Springs Food Pantry Board for over 10 years, feeding over 100 hungry families a week. We are blessed to live in the greatest state in the greatest nation, but we must keep Texas free from gangs and drug cartels, human traffickers crossing our border, free from business crushing regulations, free from gun grabbing politicians, free from leftist dogma in our schools, and free from tax and spend politicians who want to transform our state. Keep Texas free. Thank you, and vote Carrie Isaac for state representative.
Thank you, Ms. Zwiener.
So I am your state representative right now, and I have spent my first term in office fighting for each and every Texan and each and every person in House District 45, and I've done it well. That's something I will continue doing when I am reelected to the House. You know, I want for my family what I believe all Texans want. I want my daughter to get to go to great public schools. I want her to have access to affordable health care. I want her to grow up enjoying the same beautiful hill country that I did as a child. And I want her to be treated with dignity and respect by everyone in her community. Y'all, times are tough. Texans have got to be tough too. We have lost over 16,000 of our neighbors to COVID-19, a fact that was exacerbated by poor leadership at our state level, leadership that was driven more by dogma than what actually works on the ground. You know, I can tell y'all this, I am someone who will do what works and will do what works again and again and again. I will put the interests of Texans over ideology. Vote Erin Zwiener for Texas House.
Thank you. That concludes tonight's candidate forums. Thank you to Carrie Isaac and to Erin Zwiener for sharing valuable information to empower voters. And thank you to the audience. By being here, you're demonstrating your dedication to being an informed Texas voter. Community questions that could not be addressed this evening will be submitted by the League to the candidates for their response on either their campaign website, their Facebook page, or any other manner deemed appropriate by their campaigns. As we previously mentioned, recordings of tonight's forum can be found on the Hays County League website, lwvhaysco.com. Please look out for your audience and candidate feedback surveys. We want to know what's important to you so that we can do better at all future events. Have a wonderful evening. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.